A very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all. Myself Vaibhav. In today's session of Visual JForex, we will be considering the indicators overview. In last session, we have done the basic data types and the variables. Now we will be moving on to another functional aspects of Visual JForex programming. And in today's session, we will see what kind of indicators we can use and how we can build it. And a successful algorithm will, of course, involve various indicators. And this is our starting phase. We will see how we can start and go on a path of this development of our algorithms. So suppose if you are looking at any block, it will have connotation, and when we are looking at a indicator block, it will have certain inputs and output values. These are mandatory. If we consider the requirement, the basic requirement, then at least for any indicator blocks, there will be three input values and at least one output value. And if you consider this description, this is a type of a block, and it will return at least one output value, and it is obligatory, and three obligatory input parameters: the instrument, period, and the shift integer. And this will be predefined values. As we will be developing any algorithm, we will have to define these input parameters, and depending on the input values, it will generate certain output values after due calculation with the help of the underlying logic of that particular indicator. And it will have other settings as well: the offer side and the applied price. And these are the specific settings, and it is up to you. You can define them freehand, or it will be taken from the default settings. You don't need to be explicit there. And now, if you consider this example, as I said, the input values and the output values, and here these first three: instrument, period, and shift, these are mandatory. We need to fill these values as per our requirement, and then these two other input values as are given here as part of the AC block. They are not mandatory, and the default values will be taken up if we don't define ourselves. And for these indicators, we have two output values, and each indicator, depending on its logic, will generate different output values. So sometimes it is one, sometimes it is three, or even more than that. And for example, we will consider some indicators on the platform. The Visual JForex platform provides a long list of indicators which you can use for the development of your algorithm. So here, if you see this list, you will have these all sort of indicators. These are the indicators developed by Bill Williams, and the moving averages, mathematical indicators, momentum indicators, oscillators, and other which are not defined or clubbed in any particular category. Even patterns, you can use this. The trend defining indicators and the volume. So each of these indicators have been categorized depending on their functionalities. Suppose if we will go as per this listing. So first we will consider some of these Bill Williams indicators, and as you can see, we have these acceleration, deceleration, AC, the alligator indicator, awesome oscillator, BWMFI, this is a Bill Williams money flow indicator, index actually, and the fractal gator, and Williams SAR. These are fairly well known indicators. Even in some of the sessions we have used this. And considering the fact that today's is a overview session, we will take a summary look of most of these indicators. Suppose if we go on chart, so here you will find all these indicators listed here as well. And if we want to add any indicator, we will have almost identical listing here. And we will need to zoom out, we will need to change the setting. We will make it 100%. Then I will be able to add any particular indicator fairly easily. Suppose if we are going to work with the Bill Williams indicator in the Visual JForex platform, then you will first need to know its underlying function, its underlying logic. So here you can go through this list and whichever indicator you are trying to work with on the Visual JForex platform. Suppose for example, let us take this. Suppose if we want to work with this indicator and you are totally new to the platform, you are totally new to the trading, even in that scenario it won't be much hard for you to grasp this, and you can look out for the description here. You will get the description of the underlying block, underlying indicator, and as you can read through, there is a acceleration deceleration technical indicator, and it will measure the acceleration deceleration of the current driving force, and it will help you determine the direction of the momentum, the driving force, and that will help you determine the trend. So and then you will have these variables which need to be defined, and now let us go back on chart and we try to take a look. So here you have the same listing. Sometimes it is given as AC2 here, there it is AC. So it's the same indicator, and as you can see here we have to define the input values. Suppose we can determine the price on which the calculation will based. So if it is close price, the AC will be calculated differently. If it is open price, then it will be calculated differently. Just keep an eye on these bars. You will see whenever I change this pricing, these bars will change. So see here, and it has its own importance. So suppose if we are using this close price, then the same setting you can find at the bottom of this block, and here applied price. So here from these options you can choose, and you can change it as and when required, and offer side can be bid or ask. Suppose if it is asked, then also every input parameter has its influence on how you calculate, how you define the input parameters goes on to cast the impact. So because of that you have to pay due attention. Suppose on the ask side, then again you will have the calculation bit differently, as there is a spread between the bid and the ask, and because of that we see little bit of difference, though the difference is not major, but still. Now here while calculating the indicator you will have to define the other parameters here, fast period and the slow period. These are particular to the acceleration deceleration indicator. If you are working with any other indicator, then all these input parameters will be different, and here you can make any changes, and depending on what kind of parameters you are working on, it will be calculated differently. So here you will see these bars tend to change as we change these input output values. So suppose if we again go back on our indicator block, then you will see the same input parameters which need to be defined. So here these are default setting, and the fast period is at 5 and 34, and just the way we changed in the chart, here also you can make changes, and same changes will apply and any indicator will be calculated differently. So I hope you have got the point here. Let us restore what was there in default. So if we want to use default values, then you don't need to change. And here you will have the instrument name, any instrument you can choose. It is now for this particular block, the Euro USD has been chosen. You can make changes here, anything, any currency instrument, any CFD indices, or even any commodity index you can choose. Suppose if you want to use light crude, you can create any algorithm for the working on light crude. But I would like to remind that there is you can say anomaly or a fix which is yet to be done, and of course the developer team is also working on it. For the time being, you can't export the file which has been developed in the Visual JForex platform while using the commodity or the CFD indices. You have to take that file in VFS format, but the Java conversion is not yet supported. Maybe in near future it might be available, but till it becomes available, we have to choose only currency instrument if you want the file to be exported in Java language. Now, for example, you can work with NZD-CAD and you will have an algorithm which will work on the NZD-CAD parameter. The instrument will be NZD-CAD. So suppose here we want to create a algorithm for NZD-CAD. Then you simply have to choose that, and you will have a algorithm which will work on the NZD-CAD. So here we got the New Zealand dollar versus the Canadian dollar. So here is our underlying instrument, and all these technical indicators will be calculated on this instrument. And this defines the candle period. Here it is of 10 minutes. It can be of any value which can be chosen from this given option. So it can be of 10 seconds, 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, hourly, 4 hourly, daily, weekly, and monthly. So these are input options you can choose from. Shift is the candle before actually when you are using shift 0, you are denoting the current candle. When you use shift 1, that is the last candle before the current candle. So as here this new candle has started, new hour has started, and now if we want the data to be calculated on this prior candle, then you have to choose shift 1 and it will denote this candle. And if you want to go back 5 hours, then you have to choose shift 5. So this is particularly for any instrument is going to take that parameter, this shift. Suppose if it is 5, then it will go back in time 5 years, sorry, 5 hours, and it will simply calculate the number of candles. Suppose if your algorithm is defined on the period value of 10 minutes, then if we take the shift 5, then it will simply go back 5 candles of 10 minutes each. That means it will be looking at the data of 50 minutes earlier. So it simply takes into account the number of candles which have passed, and the duration of those candles depends on the period here defined. So this is the example of the acceleration deceleration which is available under the Bill Williams indicators list, and here you can work with any other indicator as well. In today's session we will not go into the functionalities, the workings of all these indicators. This is simply overview, and I want you to be aware that The Visual JForex platform offers wide variety of indicators which you can use to develop your own setup. Suppose if you want to work with alligator or for that matter any indicator, all you have to do is take this block to here, this development space. You just take a look on the input values, input parameters which need to be defined, then you see the output values. And even if you don't know what the alligator indicator is, all you have to do is go on the chart and here search for the same indicator. Now add indicator, if you choose you will again take the same head Bill Williams, then you will find the alligator is listed here. Now these input parameters we don't make any changes, we keep these default values as it is, and then you will have these indicator plotted on the chart, and now you will get a fair bit of idea of how it is going to function. Let us remove this prior indicator, linear regression and intercept. So here now if you are new to this alligator indicator, you will get a fair bit of idea of its working after observing this chart. And these are default values. If you want to make any change you can do that. So you will simply try to adjust the parameters as per your requirement, just to make sure that you are getting a good setup which will be reliable for your purpose of making profitable trades in the trading setup. The finding should be in our favor. That means any algorithm which we will be developing using these combinations or even a single indicator should be profitable for us. It should be generating more profitable trades and less loss making trades. So here you can tinker with any parameter, the input parameters. Output parameters will be defined or calculated depending on the input parameters. You can't make any manual change to the value of the output parameters. You can only change the input parameters. So here all you have to do is take this edit indicator option, look at this and see the jaw time period, the teeth time period is given, lips time period. So all these input values will be given and all you have to do is try to make some changes. You can simply keep the chart on this sideways and you try to figure out what happens when you change any particular value. So you just play around with these input values. You try to come to a setup, a system where you have fair bit of confidence of its functionality. So your whole purpose is driven to meet that requirement. So these are part of the Bill Williams family of indicators. In coming sessions, we will consider these indicators one by one. But in today's session, as I said, we are not really going into the details. So all we want to do is stick with the brief overview and given the fact that this is a long list of the tools available on the Visual JForex platform, it will take many days for me to go by one through all these indicators, functionalities, and how it can be used. So I would suggest you take any indicator for that matter. Simply on your whims, you can take any indicator randomly and you see its input parameters. First, just check out its info if it is given there. If it is not, as is the case here, you do bit of googling, you will get what is the TSF, and TSF is time series forecast. Then you figure out what is the time series forecast. You see there are certain input parameters which need to be defined. Then you will have a output value. In this case we have only a single output value, so this time series forecast will give us the output value. Then you plot the same chart as I said, while in the case of alligator, you plot the same chart here, and that was part of MA moving averages, and we will find the MAs in overlap studies, I guess, TSF. So here if we don't find it, then we have to do is do a search TSF. Okay, we got it. So here you have to define these input parameters, the price, how it is going to be defined. So it can be depending on the closing price, open price. You simply observe this, it will change whenever I change the price. So here high price, the TSF will be calculated differently, low price, the TSF will be calculated differently. So you have to define all these parameters and you will get indicators and its functional variance depending on the input parameter. So time period, if you want to change, you can change that, and here depending on its value you will have different setup defined. So this is how all these things work, and we will continue with our series, and in coming sessions we will continue to look for these details of indicators, and I think starting from Monday we will have to kind of go into the details. First maybe we might consider this Bill Williams indicator, then we will go through moving averages, the mathematical indicators, momentum, patterns, oscillator, others and all. So I hope you have got a brief idea of how all these things work. All you have to do whenever you want to develop any setup, any system, all you have to do, choose a indicator, see its input values, define its define the parameters, and check out its function on the chart as well, and then you can work with the combination. So that's it for today's session. We will be back on Monday, and then we will start afresh with Bill Williams indicator. We will see the functionalities for next week of these 7 indicators which were developed by the Bill Williams, and these are fairly popular indicators. So we will see how we can use these indicators to our advantage in coming session, and then we will continue to look for different indicator setups, as I said, one by one. So we will have this knowledge of the functionalities of all these indicators in coming days. So that's it from my side for today's session, and thank you all for joining in. Have a fabulous day and a fabulous weekend. See you on Monday. Goodbye.